Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, you're too arrogant. And if you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power.
Otap, this is Femi here with Freedom Now, and your ears are in tuned at high frequencies in a liberated zone. Freedom Now is a Pan-Africanist, global news outlet from coast to coast, dispelling the Western propaganda media and their all lies point of views. Freedom Now is devoted to relay true news, views, and proper clues to form solutions around freedom for the oppressed worldwide. Now, get relaxed. Grab a pen and phone a friend, because Freedom Now is set to begin to awaken deep sleepers dreaming about freedom now, within, in, freedom now, in.
Habari Gani. This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now's agenda for this Black History Month Saturday, February 3rd, 2024. We commence with our ancestor, Didan Kamati, and the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar. Then, we are honored to have with us two living legends. Join us today to discuss the upcoming Pan-African Film and Arts Festival happening February 7th through the 19th at the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza and Theater at King and Crenshaw in the center of the Black community here in Los Angeles. This hour, our Freedom Now co-producer, prolific author, radical historian, professor of African American Studies at the University of Houston, Dr. Gerald Horne, is in conversation with Ayuko Babu, executive director of the Pan-African Film and Arts Festival. They discuss films, many documentaries, that are important to our Freedom Now listeners given our mission statement as a Pan-Africanist and Internationalist World Affairs program. Also happening today, after our Freedom Now program, Dr. Gerald Horne is here in Los Angeles, giving a book talk at the Center for Black Power in Leimert Park, Africa Town, from 1 to 3 p.m. This is a fundraiser for KPFK. Come join us. We'll be there. It's right at the Metro stop by 43rd Place off of Crenshaw Boulevard, south of King and Crenshaw. Our music clip mix includes MLK, Zap Mama, Ray Bryant, Melba Liston, McCoy Tyner, Eddie Henderson, Gil Evans, and prison radio commentaries from Umia Abu Jamal on the occupation's wake, Black History Month in prison from Raymond Eugene Jenkins, and on Captivities from Sheikh Bilal Abdul Salam Bey. So sit back, phone a friend, and as always we stand ready for revolution.
Of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward all research. And when you see that you got problems, all you have to do is examine the historic method used all over the world by others who had problems similar to yours. And once you see how they got theirs straight, then you know how you can get yours straight.
So we bring you the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar here at KPFK's Freedom Now, where every day, every week, every month we cover African history. February 2nd, 1848, the first draft of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ceded Mexican land to the United States. Subsequently, every provision of the agreement between defeated Mexico and the United States was violated by the United States. February 3rd, 1969, Eduardo Mondlane, founder president of Frelimo, Front for the Liberation of Mozambique, was assassinated. Frelimo was a vanguard movement in the decolonization struggle against Portuguese colonialism in Mozambique. February 3rd, 1930, the Vietnamese Communist Party was founded by Ho Chi Minh and the Revolutionary Intelligentsia of Vietnam to liberate Vietnam from French and later U.S. colonial forces. The Vietnamese Communist Party continues today to provide a higher quality of life under socialism than under French and U.S. colonial rules in critical areas of education, childcare, health, food, housing, and culture. February 3, 1810, the black hero of Argentina dies. Antonio Ruiz was a national hero of Buenos Aires, Argentina. He died in the struggle to liberate his country from colonialism. February 3, 1903, Jack Johnson becomes the first Negro heavyweight champion in the world. February 3, 1920, the Negro Baseball League is founded. February 4, 1969, MPLA, Movement for the Liberation of Angola, begins armed struggle against the Portuguese colonial forces in Angola, giving rise to the overthrow not only of Portuguese colonialism in Angola, but the overthrow of the military dictatorship and the rise of a socialist government in Portugal. February 5, 1967, the Arusha Declaration is ratified, which clarifies the ideology of Tanzania as socialism. February 5, 1915, Janu Gul, a South African woman freedom fighter, organizes against the Colored Affairs Department in racist South Africa. She was a co-founder of the All-African Convention in 1935. She further organized youth resistance groups throughout the South Africa in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, and was forced into exile in 1963. February 6, 1820. Africans in America emigrate back to Sierra Leone from New York to escape the ravages of slavery. February 6, 1961. The jail-in movement starts in Rock Hill, South Carolina, when students refuse to pay fines and requested jail sentences. SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, urges Southwide Jail No Bail campaign. February 6, 1945. Bob Marley, the reggae superstar, who during the period of depoliticalization of music, with the corporate-created disco craze, brought reggae to the masses of humanity as a musical ideological weapon, whose lyrical content affirmed African history, the decolonization movements, black pride, love, and unity among many themes. February 7, 1926. Negro History Week is originated by Carter G. Woodson and observed for the first time. In 1976, it becomes Black History Month. This has been Brother Dinan Kamati with the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar.
Habari Gani. This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now, KPFK, Pacifica Radio, Los Angeles, and with me on the line are two honorable living legends. First, Ayuko Babu, the co-founder and executive director of the Pan-African Film and Arts Festival, the largest black film festival, and Dr. Gerald Horne, who serves as a Morris Professor of History in the African American Studies Department at the University of Houston, and who is also a Freedom Now co-producer and co-producer for this segment. Welcome back to Freedom Now.
Thank you for inviting us.
And it's an honor to have both of you on Freedom Now for many years now. And so as this hour, Freedom Now is dedicated to honoring the 32nd Pan-African Film and Arts Festival, we want our Freedom Now listeners to mark your calendars. February 7th through the 19th at the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza and Cinemark Theater. You could also go to www.paf.org, that's www.paff.org for more details. And so to get started, Babu, can you give our Freedom Now listeners some background into the history of the Pan-African Film and Arts Festival, extending back over 3 decades now?
Before I do a little history, let me say this, that the best way to get to the festival is on King and Crenshaw. Dr. King, Martin Luther King Boulevard and Crenshaw, about 10 minutes from the 10 freeway. away, 10 minutes from the Santa Monica Freeway south. Cannot miss it. It's in the heart of the Black community. It is a focal point. We're at the Cinemark Ray 15 Theater, formerly the Magic Johnson Theaters, and we have the art show. 200 major painters, artists, clothes designers, jewelers from all over the world in the mall, upstairs and downstairs, telling our story. And we try to bring about 200 brand new films, short stories, long stories, to try to talk about the complicated nature of who and when and where we are, and to entertain us, to hang out. You know, storytelling's always been an ancient tradition of our people worldwide, and for us, storytelling is not didactic. It is heartfelt, warm, humorous, insightful, and reflective, and mystical. So that's what we're doing. We're working on carrying our story. And the reason why we feel that at this point, while we're involved in film, a film festival, is because the stories today are transmitted by film. And there's books, but books are always, you know, it's almost now people say, let me see the film, then I'll go back to the book. And so the major art form in this historical period we're in is cinema, is film. And so we made a decision consciously to create a Pan-African Film Festival that would, at one place at one time, bring a glimpse and expose all our stories. And when I say all our stories, let me say this. As a result of the slave trade and colonization, African people have been spread all over the planet. So a little bit of our story is in Haiti, a little bit of our story is in Papua New Guinea, a little bit of our story is in Brazil, a little bit of our story is in India, a little bit of our story is in Egypt, all these different places. So in order to really get a comprehensive understanding of our story, you got to hear all the voices from all of these folks from the continent as well as the diaspora. Then you begin to understand who, when, what, where, and where we're going. And if we don't listen to everybody's story, if we don't listen to Toussaint, the leader of the revolution in Haiti, if you don't listen to the Papua New Guineans, if you listen to the Aboriginal brothers and sisters in Australia, you don't get the whole story. You don't go and pay attention to the Dalits in India and part of that story. So our story is all of that. Like an example of that is that the ancient yoga positions that we know, we can find those on the tombstones in ancient Egypt as well as in India. And the connection between India and Africa is long, long, long history. So we got to take our time, be patient, enjoy ourselves, and tell all these stories. So what we try to do is to bring a little bit of all those stories together, and then we begin to get an insight into who we are. And then what that means is this: in the complicated world we're in, between capitalism and socialism and all the isms and the schisms, as Bob Marley said, we have to really listen closely to the licking stick, closer to all of these sounds, all of these things, Bob coming out of the Caribbean. One of the things we don't know, for instance, telling our stories. There's a big story today about Bayard Rustin. There's a big film about Bayard Rustin, but they don't talk about that he had gone to India before. He had been in, helped the Nigerians put together the liberation movement. He was also struggle against the bomb up in the Sahara Desert, so it makes it a little more complicated for understanding who we are. We try to do this in an entertaining, exciting way, and say, come out and get some popcorn, sit down and enjoy, and take something with you when you leave those 15 days of stories, movies, art, film, to surround yourself with that spirit and energy. Especially in the time now where you got mad Trump going crazy and, all that mess. And so we need something to balance. When Black folks we have a tradition that when we're under siege and we are in anxiety, we come together and get a little bit more soul and spirit. So that's what the festival's all about.
So one of the awaited documentaries concerns the drummer and percussionist Max Roach.
Max Roach.
Could you talk to us about that particular documentary?
Yes, Max Roach is arguably the greatest modern jazz drummer that ever existed up to this point. And Max was a brother whose spirit goes all the way back to the beginning of the ancient drums. And he expressed that in his drumming and was able to talk about it. It's a fabulous film because you get a sense through his drumming and talking about it. You get a real sense of the long tradition of drums. Sometimes we have so many drums, we heard so many drums all our life, we don't have a chance to get a deep understanding. If somebody explains drumming, that Max is able to explain it and do it, but also somebody who can show it through feeling and through spirit and has a historical experience that goes all the way back. He's connected back to the ancient drummers from a long time ago. So it's a fabulous film. You will come away exhilarated. You'll get some insight into drumming, and you will have a better understanding of your world coming out the see Max's film. It's a fabulous film. It's something that should not be missed. If you are moved by drums at any level, get out here and come see Max Roach.
Now, understand you're also premiering a new documentary about the writer and activist Amir Baraka. Talk to us about that particular.
Oh my God! Sing,
Fight, Sing.
Sing, Fight, Sing. Imam Baraka. Let me say this: Imam Baraka Leroy Jones, one of our great writers, great poet, a master of the rhythms and energy. There'd be no Pan-African Film Festival was not for Brother Imam Baraka Leroy Jones. He was one of the first poets that grabbed our attention and made us stop and think about our life, think about what we're doing with it, think about where we're going, where we've been, and who we are. And it's a privilege to showcase Baraka's film, Sing, Fight, Sing. Imam Baraka was, you hear the word Jaleh, griot, storyteller. He was a modern Jaleh. He took that historical moment that we have and brought it all the way back, all the way up. He made me stop and think every time I read him, every time I saw him. I learned something. I grew. I would not be sitting here if it was not Imam Baraka explaining and talking to us, making us stop and pay attention to what you're doing. And he did it with rhythm and spirit and soul. So do not miss that film. Get down here. If you don't do anything else, get down and see Brother Imam Baraka Sing, Fight, Sing. It's fabulous.
And also there's a documentary about the lawyer Stephen Bingham. Some of our audience might recall that on the day that the political prisoner George Jackson was slain in August 1971, he had come to the prison, in fact, to confer with George Jackson when George Jackson was killed, and then he went underground. So talk to us about that particular film.
That's another important film because that's part of our life that a lot of people don't know, that there was never any explanation of how George got the gun. And as the young brothers in the penitentiary said, don't matter how he got the gun, he stood up and tried to liberate himself. So what happened was that the FBI, the Justice Department, the local police department deduced that Bingham, who was George's attorney, that he must have snuck in the gun. So he had the decision to make because he knew it'd be very difficult to win that, and especially with public opinion being what it was. He had to go underground for over 20 years and make another life for himself. And then eventually, when the time was right, he surfaced and came back and won his case and beat his case, and is a free man today and practicing law up in Northern California. It's another story that we don't know about. Another story that needs to expand our understanding and what it takes to resist. A lot of times we hear about resistance, but we don't ever get a chance to see a person who actually resisted, went underground for a number of years, and the FBI and the CIA and all of these people, they try to make you feel that make you think they're invincible and cannot be beat. Well, Asada Sakura beat them, and she's in Cuba for the last 20, 30 years. Stephen Bingham went underground for 20 years, 25 years, and was able to come back and then go to court and win his case. So this mythology they try to create, the system tries to create in us that it's impossible to struggle, it's impossible to resist, it's impossible to do some thinking and figure out how to get out of your situation, is an illusion that we can do. And this is a film that shows Bingham's thinking, figuring it out, trying to work it out, and was successful. And is now back practicing law and back able to defend other people in Northern California. And he was gone about over 20 years underground and successfully with it.
So we're discussing the Pan-African Film Festival, which is initiated on February 7th, 2024. And all of the films we've discussed thus far, you can find details about their showing at paff.org. And speaking of which, I understand there's also going to be a film about Diane Watson, who may be familiar to your audience insofar as she was a leading Black politician in the Southland, a former U.S. ambassador. Talk to us about Diane Watson and that documentary.
Diane Watson, first, she's a homegirl from Los Angeles. And for all the people like myself who came here from other places, sometimes it's hard to find local people from Los Angeles because it's such a huge metropolis that you don't get a chance to see people who actually grew up here in L.A., born here in L.A., and it's part of that Black community that came out here from the 19th century. And Diane is one of those people, one of those families. She used to live across the street from Rochester, famous comedian in the 1950s, 1940s. So she is always a big supporter of the Pan-African Film Festival and always believed in stories and telling. So it's a good insight to LA and to Black folks in LA and how we got here. You know, you wonder about who, what, when, and where about LA. You'll get a good insight from Diane Watson, who grew up here, and became successful here and was thoughtful here. It's a very good film.
And I take it she may be part of this other documentary, Respect My Crown, which deals with Black women politicos. I assume it touches upon Maxine Waters, for example, perhaps
Maxine Waters,
Bass, for example.
Mayor Karen Bass. Respect My Crown is another attempt to give us a better understanding of Black LA historically and the role that Black women have played historically in this city that's shaped us. Because a lot of times what we understand about how the city, how Black community was shaped and how it dealt with the other communities in the city, the female part of that has been left out. A lot of times you'll hear the description of, the brother who was the editor of the Sentinel or Mayor Bradley, etc. But this film really gives you a sense of the female that played a role in this city, the Black females that have laid a foundation in this city historically down to present, to the point of having Holly Mitchell, who is one of the most powerful people in Southern California. She's a supervisor, the county supervisor, which is one of the 5 supervisors that actually run the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles. So it's a really, really good insight into that neglected aspect of the role that Black women played in the city. And I say that to say this. We know about the former city councilman of the 9th District that covered downtown Los Angeles, East Los Angeles, and some part of South Central Los Angeles. And we know about him, Gil Lindsay, but we don't know that it was Gil Lindsay's wife that organized and created that and made it possible for him to become who he is, Gil Lindsay, because they felt there was need for a Black man to be the first city council person. So that's very important to get that female history of Los Angeles and understand we've been shaped by both men and women in leadership.
And then there's Bar Daddy. The description suggests that it talks about this brother who helped all of these Black law graduates pass the bar exam, which is the final hurdle before one becomes a lawyer after graduating from law school. Exactly. What is the story about Bar Daddy?
Well, Bar Daddy, and why we put that in there, because we want to demystify not only the historical, the cultural, also demystify the intellectual procedural processes by which we get through and matriculate through the society. And one of the ways of matriculating through society is to understand the system and develop tools, become lawyers, study law. Law is a foundation in order to understand capitalism. You can't understand capitalism without understanding the rise of the legal system and the process of how the law was used in terms of the development of capitalism and back to feudalism, the landlord, tenant, and those kind of things. Well, Bar Daddy, this brother has devoted himself for the last 20 or 30 years to helping people get past the bar and helping people to master the bar, to understand how to win at taking the bar. It's so important. I mean, to show you how important it is that not only was I, undergrad in sociology and trying to understand social theory, but I also went to law school and understood how social theory was translated into actual institutions and rules and regulations that guide us and set the parameters of our life. So that's important. And getting past, and one of the big hurdles is passing the bar. Mm-hmm. And this brother has mastered that process and showed us how you break down, defy the mysticism, and learn how to practically deal with the bar and handle the bar and get past it. He's got a lot of Black folks over the last 20, 30 years through the bar. So we felt it important in a practical way for people to understand not just history, but also understand the mechanics of how to use the tools inside the system. I tell a lot of people that people say, well, how did you get to the concept of the Pan-African Film Festival? It had a lot to do with my study of law. And one of the things that helps us a lot is that the people that run the Pan-African Film Festival have studied law, and we know how to use the law and understand how it works, not only the mechanics of law, but also the legal and philosophical foundation of Western jurisprudence. So that's very important. Understanding helps us really get through this very much.
Now, speaking of law,
out and see it.
Of course. Now, speaking of law, there's also a documentary, One Person, One Vote, which deals with the machinations of the Electoral College. As we know more than most, in a U.S. presidential race, you can get the most votes, as Hillary Clinton could tell you, and still lose.
Yes.
And I understand that this documentary about the Electoral College also talks about its racist origins, its enslaving origins. Could you talk to us about that?
Again, absolutely. That we put that in for the same reason, so that you can really understand the mechanisms by which our life is guided and controlled, the Electoral College. Because very few people know about the Electoral College. So we decided to show that, which is an example of that is Trump lost the popular vote, but won as a result of the Electoral College. He won his seat to become president, and very few people really understand that. We feel that our people need to have exposure and experience to that and come in and see it and understand how the Electoral College works. It's an excellent documentary. You'll have a better understanding of the process and how Trump became who he is and how that works. So that's, again, we try to bring stories about concrete specific things, about also philosophy, also about historical, as well as practical things about Electoral College. We didn't know about the Electoral College till we was almost grown. So it is part of our job as storytellers, and storytellers including, average person may think, well, storytelling is talking James Baldwin's story, but it's also the Electoral College. That's a story, and we're trying to show that these are all stories. And if you understand that, I remember the first time that people were telling me when we started going to law school, I was excited about going to law school and reading the case. Everyone said, it's terrible to read the cases. I started reading those cases, and this was the whole story. These are all stories. These are all stories. So it was exciting that you can't be everywhere in the world, but you can get a law book, a case book, and it takes you around the world. So, I mean, it did a lot for me, because there were places that studying law and reading the cases would take me 40 years to maybe not even get there on these things. A lot of my understanding of how to put together the Pan-African Film Festival came directly from studying the cases in the law school.
We're talking to Brother Babu about the Pan-African Film Festival, which is opening up on February 7th. And thus far, I've been talking about documentaries. I'm afraid to say that's one of my primary interests. But I know that you screened a lot of narrative films, stories, fiction films. What would you point to in that particular category?
One of the stories that I think is really valuable in this discussion, I'm trying to find it here. There's a story by a filmmaker from Burkina Faso. Her name is Woye, and I'm going to try to find it here. She has a story from all the way from Burkina Faso. And Burkina Faso, for those who don't know, you begin to hear about Burkina Faso. You hear about the jihadists in Burkina Faso taking control of half of Burkina Faso. All of the issues you hear about the jihadists moving, the Russians, the mercenaries. Well, this film looks at that in a very concrete way, and it's very important. We felt it was important to bring her story. She is the top filmmaker from Burkina Faso, but her film is something that you should come out to see.
Well, let me ask you, I understand that the opening night film is about hip-hop.
Hip-hop.
It stars Cedric the Entertainer. And I must say that in reading the description, it seemed, if I may, to sound like a story that at least seems to invoke Russell Simmons, if I'm not mistaken.
Hello, exactly. What it is it's a story of hip-hop, and you can't stop how it became a dominant force in the world, and the person who shepherded that whole genre into what we know today as hip-hop is Russell Simmons, and who was also practiced yoga, and he also had a lot of relationships. The film deals with Wayne Brady's in the film, Little Mama's in the film, Damien Radcliffe's in the film, Cedric the Entertainer's in the film. So you get a chance to see that whole genre and how it evolved. And again, we want to give folks an opportunity to really sit back and see how it all happened. Because so much of the time, we are the end products of the music, but we don't know how it happened, how decisions were made, who made those decisions, how it came to be. And one of the things that, if you don't know that, then if you don't know the beginning, you will not know the end. And so for instance, almost all of our generation, we remember the Five Satins and Still of the Night and all those great songs of the 50s and the 60s, but we don't know how it got started, when it got started. We don't have a complete understanding of the music we used to dance to and used to have a good time too. Well, this film the hip-hop story tries to fill that in for this period of hip-hop, so that you can really have a better understanding. And if you have a better understanding, then you can better mobilize in and around hip-hop. You can better explain hip-hop and help people to integrate hip-hop into the historical narrative of our people.
Mm-hmm. Now, understand that particular film, A Hip-Hop Story, will be kicking off the Pan-African Film Festival on Wednesday, February 7th at 7:30 p.m. at the Writers Guild Theater, 135 South Duhaney Drive in Beverly Hills, California. I won't mention the ticket price, but you can go to paff.org to get that particular detail. And I also understand that you're going to be showing a new film that involves Mario Van Peebles. Is that correct?
Yes. Absolutely. Mario, and also, by the way, Mario will also be we have a brunch for young filmmakers. We have about 100 and some filmmakers that will be coming in, and we have a private brunch at the DGA, the Directors Guild of America, and we have that relationship so that we can give young people exposure to the actual institution that dominates and sets the pace in terms of their life. Well, the Directors Guild of America is all the directors in the United States belong to that guild, and they have associations around the world. So if you are interested in making films or directing, then it is the Directors Guild is how you develop your relationships and so forth and so on. In addition, it is the union for the directors, which makes sure that they get their money, make sure that they don't get left out of that huge pot of gold that's generated by cinema. And Mario is going to be speaking there at the Directors Guild to talk about, he's the second generation black filmmaker. There's very few second generation black filmmakers. His father set the tone for black conscious films in the 1960s, Sweet Sweetback, Melvin Van Peebles. So he's a second generation, so you get a chance to have that exposure, that experience is going to be done at the DGA. One of the things that we try to demystify that experience. When we were growing up, we went to the show, we used to call it the show, right? And then we left. And sometimes we didn't even read the credits. And we didn't get a complete, sophisticated understanding. Nobody in my neighborhood explained what you going and seeing and experiencing is the major art form of the 20th century. We had no idea that cinema was a major art form of the 20th century and into the 21st century. On the big screen, the small screen, that's how your story gets told and how your story gets, destroyed through cinema. And there's people at the Directors Guild who started all this. So you go to the Directors Guild, you actually see all the early filmmakers who started cinema, their whole history, all the photographs. It's a fabulous exposure. So we expose all the filmmakers to that experience. So it's no longer mysterious. Everything's mysterious, so you want to demystify the mysterious. So it's very important. And Mario will be there to talk about his father and how his father influenced him to make films and how he's a second generation, why he's still standing. Mario's going to have, his film is going to be our closing night film called Outlaw Posse. Mm-hmm. And he's got Whoopi Goldberg playing Stagecoach Annie, a very famous black person, a black woman in the 19th century that ran a stagecoach across the West. All these, Cedric the Entertainer, all these people taking all these different roles in terms of our history and our study. Mario is very conscious of it because he's got a father looking at him as an ancestor who's standing there saying, what you gonna do? It's a pleasure. And we feel very good about it. We're excited about it. Come out and enjoy it. As closing night is Outlaw Posse. Mario Van Peebles will be at the Cinemark Wave 15 on King and Crenshaw with that incredible story of Outlaw Posse.
On February 19th, I take it.
Right, the last day.
And also the film I think you were trying to recall from Burkina Faso was Sira, S-I-R-A.
Sira, yes.
And
go ahead.
Are there any other films from the continent of Africa that struck your imagination?
Sira absolutely did. First, let me just say this a little bit about Sira. Is a film that catches the spirit of our people starting in Burkina Faso and moving across the continent. And actually, the making of that film is also part of the political, social, and cultural struggles going on in Africa. As a result of the rise of the Boko Haram and the rise of the Islamists, they have taken half of Burkina Faso. So they had, Woye, the director of Sira, had to move her filming of that film in Burkina to Mauritania. And she was able to do that, which is about 1,000 1,500 miles away, able to do that because she enlisted the support of President Blaise Compaoré, who's in exile in Ivory Coast, and he called the president of Mauritania, and they made it possible to finish her film in Mauritania. So the making of that film is also a story in itself.
Mhm.
That's a very, very important film series.
Any other films from the continent that struck your imagination?
Yes, there's another film from the continent, from Benin, from Togo, and Germany, called Becoming Black. Becoming Black. This is a film by a lady named Ines Johnson Spain, who grew up, her mother was half African, half Togo, from Togo, land next to Ghana, Togo, and half German. And she was raised in East Berlin by a white couple and experienced all of the issues that black folks experience when you're raised in a white conscious situation. She ultimately found herself going to look and try to understand how she got to that situation in East Germany and went all the way to Togo and traced her whole story. It's called Becoming Black in that process, and that will give you a real good understanding of people who go through those kind of, because we know about black folks who get stuck in these different places. But here's a person who has made a film called Becoming Black by Ines Johnson Spain from Togo.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's also a documentary called Gaining Ground. I take it that it deals with black people in their relationship to land loss, particularly in the South.
Yes.
Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, that's, again, we've lost again, another story. There's a whole story that we know that so many black folks have lost land, have moved to the north, wasn't able to control the land. And so one of our lack of wealth from one generation to the next, this story looks at that and examines that and gives you a real understanding of the struggle that's going on around that question in the South in terms of fighting about land and the struggle around that question. And it takes you right to places where you can't even find, your grandfather's grave because all the land now has been taken. And there's a big fight. But again, we hear about these things, but this film takes you actually to these places where the grandfather, grandmother, all have been buried, and then as a result of gentrification, they took that and then tried to bulldoze those places, and then black folks had to struggle to make sure that was protected and expanded and not destroyed. And there's battles like that going on all across the country. It's a silent struggle, but again, we need to know about these struggles.
Mm-hmm. Now, back to the law, there's also, I guess you'd call it a featurette concerning how to sue the Klan. Let's take it to how-to manual in terms of how to litigate against the Ku Klux Klan. Talk to us about that.
Exactly. Well, again, that's an important story because, again, we, in our struggle, we mobilize, we demonstrate, and then sometimes burn across the country, right? But sometimes there's different tools in different situations, and that's a film that deals with that took on the Klan and won, and crippled them a little bit, Again, trying to expand our understanding of the story. These are stories too, and it's not dry. I mean, the people, when you say these kind of legal discussions, usually people think it's dry, but it's not dry. It really gives you up close and a sense of how these things work. And so you can go in and see that film, and then you have a better understanding next time. And it's always in the paper. These issues are always in the paper. So next time you pick up the paper, next time you see something on television, you'll begin to have a better understanding of these things. That's the whole purpose of these kind of films, and as well as entertaining.
Now, we mentioned a moment or two ago the film about Diane Watson.
Right.
Person rooted in Black Los Angeles, and just skimming and scanning the lineup of films, I noticed that there are a number of young Black filmmakers from the Southland who are represented in the festival. Could you talk about that? And in the context, if there is a filmmaker who might want to submit a film for 2025, how do they go about that?
Number one, watch the website for all information about how to submit a film. And again, our website is www.paff.org. I'll repeat that again. PAFF.org stands for Pan-African Film Festival. Go on our website in July and you will have all the information on how to submit a film, procedure, and you can submit your film that way and lock it in. It's all on the website. It's very easy to do. And that's how you get a chance to become part of this. It's just that simple.
Mm-hmm. Also, as I said, are there any other films of particular relevance to Black Los Angeles, for example, other than the film on Diane Watson, other than the films that, for example, have stars from the Southland, such as Whoopi Goldberg, for example, any films by budding filmmakers, up-and-coming filmmakers that we should keep an eye on?
A lot of them. Number one, go on the website, take your time. The reason why we put it on the website is so you can take your time, sit at home and read the descriptions, read the comments, and see the stars. It's all laid out so you can, in the comfort of your home, you can go through every single film, and we also have trailers on our website. You can also get a glimpse of the films. So that's part of the homework that the new generation is saying. Go, it's all right there. Every single film that we're showing in the festival is already, a trailer is on the website. If it's not, it will soon be on the website. Check it every day. And then you'll get a chance to see what time it's playing, how many times it's playing, and be able to enjoy and have access to it and get descriptions. That is part of the process by which you really get into this festival, is by going and looking and spending, and take the time to read those descriptions. And you can even Google the film, and some other conversation will come up about the film. So it's an opportunity that you can sit in your leisure at home and read about the film, see comments about the film, and then you can make up your mind. Also, what we're going to be doing after the festival, a few days, a couple weeks after the festival, we're going to take 60 of the films and put it on the platform. So go to YouTube, Pan-African Film Festival, will tell you how to, or go to our website, will tell you how to access the films at home. We're going to show about 60 of those films.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So we've been in conversation with Brother Babu, the founder and executive director of the Pan-African Film Festival, which opens up on King and Crenshaw, February 7th through 19th. Of course, the opening film will be shown at the Writers Guild Theater in Beverly Hills, Hip Hop Story. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK, Pacifica Radio, Los Angeles.
Thank you. There's one, if I got another second.
Sure.
We are privileged to have a major film from Ethiopia that's going to be screening. It tells the whole story of the Ethiopian story and Ethiopian revolution that has just taken place, and the coming of power of the president in Ethiopia. It gives you a whole sense from Haile Selassie down to now. It's the whole Ethiopian cast is coming. It's a major film. How there's been issues about the water, who controls the water on the Blue Nile, and whether or not the Ethiopians built a dam there, and the Egyptians are saying, well, it may disrupt the water. It has not disrupted the water. But a major issue of how the Ethiopian revolution is progressing. They're bringing all the top stars from Ethiopia. By the way, Ethiopia is one of the biggest consumer of films and producing films. They have an entire film industry that's controlled from bottom to top by Ethiopians. All the theaters are run by Ethiopians. All the production companies are run by Ethiopians. And that was all done in the 1930s with Haile Selassie, that said this is important to develop cinema. They all are going to be here. Some of the great actors from Ethiopia are going to be here telling the story, the Ethiopian story. So it's something that do not miss.
Mm-hmm. Any other do not miss anecdotes you would like to add before we sign off?
There's another film called Lo Capitino. We've seen over and over again people who try to come to the West by walking through the Sahara Desert and get on a boat, and the boat sinks and 200 or 300 migrants die over and over and over again. This is a feature film about two young brothers in Senegal who decide to try to go to Europe to what they perceive of great fortune. And their trek through the Sahara Desert, being bullied and roughed up by hustlers in Libya after the destruction of President Gaddafi, and their whole thing trying to get to the West. And it's a tremendous story of people dying along the way, people needing water. I mean, it takes you right there in terms of that experience and what it's like to be in the desert and left to die in the desert. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very, very important film. It's called Lo Capitino, Capitano, Lo Capitino, and it takes you right there on the ship. We see these things every day we turn on television. That's one thing we try to do in the festival. What you see, the news on television, we try to the story behind it. So every day you can look at BBC, ABC, CBS, and see Channel 2, Channel 7, Channel 5, some people on these little boats trying to get to England, trying to get to France, trying to get to Italy, and they capsize and they all die, washed up on the shore. You know, it takes you right there. They've made a film that's an incredible film called Lo Capitino, Capitano, from Senegal, Italy, France. It's incredible. It's also nominated for Best International Film at the Oscar, except for Best Now. So it's a tremendous film.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, Brother Babu, founder of the Pan-African Film Festival, PAFF.org. We'll be looking forward to seeing you at King and Crenshaw beginning as the festival moves there after the opening at the Writers Guild Theater. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK, Los Angeles.
Thank you.
And now for our prison radio commentaries.
Occupation's weight. As we examine, study, and analyze the events in Gaza and Israel today, we learn of the lengths taken by the occupation as it dominates the land space of Gaza in the Palestinian territories. Occupation is a polite way of speaking of what is, in fact, the seizure and taking of another people's land by military means. Cameroonian philosopher Achille Mbembe, in his remarkable book, Necropolitics, writes keenly and deeply of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and provides dazzling insights into the origins and drives operating beneath the roof of consciousness. First and foremost, Mbembe explains, we find separation. This is followed by the creation of an enclave or separate space, and next, the destruction of those deemed enemies of the state. This separation instinct, Mbembe tells us, is a master desire to dominate an other who then faces subjugation, which leads further to a desire to destroy. Mbembe writes tellingly that, and this is a quote, occupation is in every respect hand-to-hand combat and a tunnel. Please note that his book was published initially in French in 2016. Mbembe writes, the colonial enterprise was driven by a mixture of sadism and masochism, applied gropingly and in response to largely unexpected events. It was inclined to smash all forces standing in the way of its drives, to inhibit their course toward all sorts of perverse pleasures. The limits to what it considered normal were constantly shifting, and few desires were subject to straightforward repression, let alone embarrassment or disgust. The colonial world's capacity to cope with the distraction of its objects, natives included, was astonishing. Mbembe, page 45-46. Achille Mbembe, like many African scholars, activists, and thinkers, look at the settler colonial setup in Palestine and see apartheid. But if so, it's apartheid with a difference. In South Africa, the system needed African labor to build its wealth. Israel doesn't need Palestinian labor. It seeks their land, making the people superfluous and therefore in a worse.
Okay, hi, this is Raymond speaking from Portland, California, and from Portland State Prison. Today's story is the topic is Black history inside the prison. I know that a lot of prisoners and the prison system does not teach, educate prisoners about Black history in prison. We do it in school, and we do it in college. So why are we not doing it in the prison system? A lot of prisoners doesn't understand what is Black history. A lot of prisoners doesn't understand pertaining the background on race in the prison system. We still have them, what we say, eyes closed to exactly what's going on. We have eyes closed to Black and white, Spanish. We have, different groups, prison gangs that doesn't understand the contents of Black history. I think that they should have a class in the prison system pertaining to Black history, because it's much needed, and a lot of us doesn't speak on it when we come out of prison. A lot of people, I guess, they close their mind on it. We have so many young men and women that doesn't understand why Black history was created, and that way that with these classes they will be able to understand, and they will be able to, how we say, ask questions and work on certain issues pertaining to when it comes to February of Black History Month. We see the movies that they show, and we see the struggle that they show, but we doesn't see a lot of progress shows, and especially in the prison system. We know what happened in the past, and a lot of us continue to focus on the past. But we definitely try to move forward and forward. Don't get me wrong, we have moved a lot of mountains, but it's some big mountains that we still need to move. I'm willing to do whatever I can coming out of the prison system in about 23 months left to make sure that this can continue going on inside the prison system. While I'm inside the prison system, I'm going to do whatever I can to promote and see, can I get something going on? Also, I'd like to hear back from people that believe in that, and like to have comments on that pertaining to Black history inside the prison system. The main thing is to talk about also, like I said, all this month will be about the Black history of February. I want to talk about, in coming weeks, about veterans that are in the prison system. The problem is we have a lot of veterans that fighted for the country, to protect us from the country, but we have some issues that who protects us from them breaking the law. And why is so many veterans breaking the law when they coming out of military and they not being taken care of? And if that's the reason they breaking the law, we have not found a solution to that. So I will be talking about that. Hopefully we can come up with it. So once again, my name is Mr. Jenkins at Corcoran State Prison. And you can reach me at CDC number is BM4522 4B-3R-C58, P.O. Box 3481, Corcoran, California 93212. You can email me at gettingout.com and put my information in. You'll be able to text me. I would like to hear the response to that, and I would like to see your views. I will be talking about a lot of issues that need to be talking about in and out of the prison system, like I said before. I look forward to hear from you, and I look forward to continue talking to you about issues that you might want to bring up, and I would be glad to address them. Thank you, and have a nice day.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
Yes, this is Charlie Hughes, better known as Sheikh Bilal Abdul Salam Bey, currently housed at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility in Hutchinson, Kansas. This piece is called Captivities Part 1, and it is based on a course that I took through College Guild. S.P. Dunn said, "Justice is blind. Blind she is, and deaf and dumb, and has a wooden leg. I took this to mean that she can be swayed to work for good or evil. She is unbiased. An example of when she is blind and deaf is when an innocent man is placed in prison and has to stay here for 20 or more years before he is able to be released. This happens a lot in the United States. A law that is considered unjust in the United States is the locking up of mental health people in prisons. If I was able to run for a political office, I would change this by confining them to treatment centers where they can receive the help they deserve and not be subjected to mental, emotional, and physical torture. One thing that is being addressed in the media right now is the ban on assault and automatic weapons. It is not wise for everyone to be able to have automatic weapons because they could get in the hands of the wrong people. Yet to take guns from the American people would cause an uproar because the government will be infringing upon our Second Amendment right, which gives us the right to bear and keep and bear arms for self-defense. One thing that I would like the Kansas state government to approve would be the legalization of medical and recreational marijuana. Medical reports have stated that marijuana can reduce high blood pressure, cancer, and can reduce the death toll of patients with coronavirus. It would also reduce the prison population. People of African descent face the most racial discrimination and stereotyping. It started with slavery in the U.S. in 1619. It has lasted because those in power promoted through systematic racism. The results are murders of unarmed brothers and sisters by their racist counterparts and the mass incarceration of innocent brothers and sisters. It has not changed over time. Think about brothers and sisters like Hugo Pannell, may he rest in peace, Rachel McGee, Sundiata Acoli, Mumia Abu Jamal, Debbie Sims Africa, Janet Holloway Africa, Janine Phillips Africa, Imam Jamil Al-Amin, Robert Seth Hayes, just to name a few. These are all the political prisoners that have been and are being held captive in the United States. Those on the outside are all being held captive by inflation, job layoffs, medical fees, and education for your children. Let's unite and stand up against captivity. Shout out to all political prisoners who are being held captive in prison.
This poem is unnamed. Final performance. The day after, torments, and my heart flutters with the pitter-patter of longing. PCAP, family, truly our family, cultivating a sense of belonging. The resounding resonance of missing our students shakes my heart till it hurts. When will MDOC see that despite all of their collective corrective arming, they lack PCAP love, which has proven so disarming? We are like an army of love, an army of one, shining bright like the sun. I pray I may help them all see they're moving like Jesus, the Son of the one and only Creator above. The students I love may not even know they're doing for us exactly what Jesus instructs when it comes to us locked and stuck in a crux of so-called living, example giving. The book of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 35 to 45, elaborates my point just enough, but I digress back to the touch that tugs the hearts of us locked up, and for a moment in time pulls our minds out of this mess to be blessed by near adolescence. For me, there's a hint of my children reaching out from heaven to help lessen the load on the burden of life in prison, which can be haunting, although my joy makes it nearly non-existent, and PCAP helps enrich this. Enriching joy despite my performance. Today and hereafter, torment relents. That's the poem, guys, and just for the sake of better understanding, PCAP is the Prisoner Creative Arts Program through the University of Michigan. That's what that PCAP meant. Thank you for your time, and have a good day.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
And in closing, we'd like to thank our guests. Thank you, Ayuko Babu. Thank you to our producers, Dr. Gerald Horne, Sister Flora, Sister Femi, Brother Brandon, our board op Wendell. Thank you, Mark Maxwell, for your support. Please stay tuned for our Sister Assumpta coming up next with Spotlight Africa, addressing issues facing Mother Africa. We look forward to seeing you at the Center for Black Power from 1 to 3 p.m. in conversation with Dr. Gerald Horne here in Leimert Park. Signing off for Freedom Now, this is Sister Thage, and until next week, as always, we stand ready for revolution.